we've always wanted a place where people would feel welcome. So,
Hello everyone, welcome to Heart with Alberta Muembo. My name is Alberta Muembo for those of you who are joining us for the first time. And today, or rather this week, we're focusing on friendship. We're going to share 2 stories on friendship, and the first one is about the most friendly couple in Saskatoon. Well, we often refer to them as Elisha's parents. So let's find out why they're very friendly. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Alberta, and just encourage. Hola, moyo iba. Bote na bino. I'm here with Pastor Terry, and we call his wonderful wife Mama Shelley. They both pastor Christ the Healer Church. My brother works there, and I'll just let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Terry, and we've been married for 37 years, or 37 coming up in February. But it's been an amazing time, amazing journey, and it's covered a lot of ground. But she's been an amazing wife and an incredible person to work with in ministry and stuff. So.
and I am Shelley, and yes, we've been married for 36 years. Doesn't seem that long, but have 5 wonderful children, and now we've just grown to 14 people in our family now, and we'll get into that later. So.
Very exciting. I am so grateful that you accepted my invitation. I'm not a professional, so whenever people like you accept my invitation, it really means a lot to me. So thank you for coming.
Awesome, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
It's a real privilege for us to be here.
Thank you. So we'll just proceed to the questions. So one thing my siblings and me agree on is that Christ the Healer is the most friendly church in Saskatoon. When we first went to Christ the Healer Church, everyone was hugging us just to say hello. And then also after the service, everyone was hugging us to say goodbye. Normally it's just the pastor or whoever invited us that will hug us or say hello, but everyone else will not really mind us. So our question is, how did that start? How did you adopt that culture? Because it's very rare in Saskatoon.
Oh wow, I don't know. I guess it's just who we are. We call ourselves Huggerites, and we like to hug, and it's just kind of the way we are, both of us. I guess we like to have contact, and so it's just something that's developed in our lives, in all our churches we've been a part of. It just comes organically, I guess, and naturally, and we start hugging, so it kind of catches, and everybody starts hugging. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, and also we had gone down to Kansas City to World Revival Church, and we just saw everyone just coming up to us, just because we were probably the new people in the church too, but just so willing to open themselves up to strangers, right? Because you like you said, you can walk into a church and not one single person talks to you,
right,
because you're just checking it out, but Terry and I we've always wanted a place where people would feel welcome. So, so you shake their hand or you hug them and welcome them.
I was at a church years ago, a long time ago, in the East Coast. And we went to this fairly large church, and nobody really talked to us when we walked in. And at the end of the service, I said, I'm going to go stand in the middle of the church and see how long it takes for somebody to come and actually talk to me. I was in the middle of the foyer after the church, and I went and stood out there. Not one person come and talk to me. So I thought if we ever have a church, I don't want it to be like that. I want people to be. Basically, we want people to attack you, not in a physical way, but just to attack. Hey, how you doing? And just be welcoming, and because a lot of people aren't welcomed anywhere,
Yes.
you know, so
Yeah.
it's always been a kind of a in our thought process to just to be real and connect and treat everybody the same way. So, and it catches everybody, I think. So, because we don't teach it.
Yeah.
Don't get up behind the pulpit and say, "Hey guys, you got to hug one another." We've never even talked about it. It's just something that happens. You know?
I thought maybe you had a meeting with maybe some assistant pastor, or maybe the worship leader who is actually their son-in-law, and said, you know, maybe talk to the youth or talk to, I don't know, women's group, that whenever visitors come, you have to hug them.
No.
So nothing.
No, never.
Wow. So it's contagious.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it really means a lot, like you said, because for us, we moved from Africa, we came here, and we had to learn to adapt to an individualistic culture where, you know, Western culture, you know, it's an individualistic culture, which is good in some ways. You don't mind people's business that much. But in Africa, everyone wants to touch you, wants to know about you. So it was a bit difficult for us to adapt to that. But when we came to Christ the Healer, it was like, is this really Canada? Are we really in Canada? It felt really like home, like you said. People are looking for, you know, that familiarity rang in our heads, and we're like, wow, these people are just some other type of Canadians. So I'm so glad that it's contagious, and I think it's something that all the other churches should adapt, because it means a lot. So when did you decide to be pastors of Christ the Healer Church?
September 15th, 2017. I remember the day exactly. It's the day I got born again in 1991. But I guess it's kind of can I just go back a ways? I'm from Norquay, Saskatchewan. Shelley's from Pelly. We're 8 miles apart, the two communities, but we were both raised on farms. And I wasn't raised in a church, and never went to church or anything like that. But we had this Pastor Max Sobrekin, is from Norquay also. Never knew him, never met him. He went to school with my dad. Everybody thought they were crazy people because they were spirit-filled. They're the only spirit-filled people in Norquay for forever, probably till we got filled with the Holy Ghost. And we found out they're the normal ones. The rest of us were the weird ones. But it was kind of strange. Shelley and I got married in 1984, and we moved away for a couple of years from Norquay, and my hometown. And so we came back after a couple of years, and we lived with my brother for a little bit, and then we were looking for a place to live. And this house was for rent in Norquay, and it was Pastor Max Sobrekin's dad's house. And it was a fairly new house, and you know, it was 5 years old maybe, but it didn't have a scratch, and it was like brand new. And they were renting it out for $200 a month, and back then that was about the normal rate in a small town for renting. And so we rented that house. It was a really nice house. We had one child at the time. I was carpenter also, and I was an alcoholic at that time. And so we moved into this house, and you know, and that's the kind of the name, Sobrekin name around there was that they're religious kooks, you know. That's the way the community kind of looked at them. And when, to be honest, when I was a drunk, it was the same way. So we rented this house, and then on the weekends I'd go to the bar, get drunk and stuff like that. And when my friends found out we rented Sobrekin's house, they would say to me, my drunk buddies would say to me, he said, "Oh, Terry, you're going to be a preacher like Max Sobrekin someday." And I said, like, I wouldn't even hardly set foot in a church. The only thing I ever went to church for, we got married in a church, go to funerals and weddings, and that was it. So I said, I just swear at them, I said, "Get lost, you goofballs." And so later on in life, when we became pastors in 2000, what year was that? 2000.
You mean where we took the church?
Yeah, 2004 in Sturgis, Saskatchewan, and we started pastoring there. And then Pastor Max heard that we were pastoring a Seversons, he knew the family well. He knew my grandparents really well, and my dad so knew of each other. And so Pastor Max gave me a call, and he said, I hear there's a spirit-filled preacher from Norquay. Would that be you, sir? And I was like that. I said, yes, yeah, that's me. And it was Pastor Max. And so I'd never met him up until that time. And so he wanted to get together, so he come and preached at our church, and then we did some traveling around. And we in the province of Saskatchewan, we went to, I don't know, 10, 12 communities, 14, I can't even remember. So I spent like a couple, 3 weeks with him, and he's just an incredible man of God. This man has been all over the world, preached the gospel in many, many nations, and preached to hundreds of thousands of people. Seen signs and wonders and miracles, and so I just really respected and honored him. Like I said, I found out he was the normal one. We were the kooks, really, before, because we didn't know God, right? So we were in Sturgis for 3 years, and then we went to Assiniboia for a year, or for 10 years. But after the 3-year period, we were in Assiniboia, and Max connected with us again, and he says, I've planted a new church in Saskatoon, and I'd like you to come and preach. And I said, oh, awesome. Well, you can come back to Assiniboia too and preach for a weekend. And so he invited us here, and it's a pretty rough community. The church looked really rough back then. There's been a lot of work done since then. He did a lot of work, and we've done a lot of work on it. But so I come for the weekend. Shelley didn't come at all. Josh McDonald came with me, and we preached for the weekend. And he says, Terry, would you like to take this church over someday? And I said, no, thank you. I didn't like the area. I didn't like anything about it, other than the people were here. They were awesome people, but I didn't want to come to Saskatoon at that time, because we had just started in Assiniboia, and it was a beautiful community, great church. You had a lot of young people, and just they were really. It was an honor to pastor there. They were a great group of people. So in 2017, Lonnie Sims, he's an evangelist. You know Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, her dad. And he's an evangelist, and so we had both him and I have been in Brazil and preached over there, and so we'd never gone at the same time, but we knew each other, and he was bringing a man from Brazil that we had worked with, that he arranged everything over in Brazil for us, Dario Martini. He says, I'm bringing him to Canada. Would you like him to come to your church? I said, oh, absolutely. I wouldn't want to miss that. And make sure, let's have them. So this was June of 2017. And so we're talking, and Lonnie says, how long have you been in Assiniboia now? I said, well, we've been here just about 10 years. And he says, well, you must be about ready for a change by now. And I go, well, no, not really. I said, I think God's up to something. I'm not sure what it is, what he wants us to do, but I don't see anything in the near future. And he says, well, there's a church in Saskatoon, Max Sobrek is still looking for a pastor to take that over. And I said, no thanks. It was like that. And kind of left it. And he phoned me a couple of times that summer and kept kind of bugging me. He says, there's a church, I think you'd do really well there. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So the reason I know the date I don't remember dates very often, other than when my birthday, Shelley's birthday, my kids and stuff, our wedding anniversary. And I was back home in Norquay, harvesting. I take a month off every year and go out with my brother harvest. It's a break for me. I get away. It's a break for the church. It's a break for everybody. And so I went home, and Shelley was speaking at a conference in Saskatoon on that weekend, September 14th, 15th, 16th. And I was supposed to come in Sunday morning and preach for Sunday morning service at their church at the Bridge Ministries International, Apostle Terry Noel's church. So I'm on my way to Saskatoon, and I seen on my phone, a thing popped up, said Shelley Severson is live at Bridge Ministries. So I stopped in Humboldt for a bite to eat, and I said, oh, it'd be a good time to watch. So I watched her preach, and she did a really good job. She needs to do more of that too. But She just elbowed me. But so I finished that, and I was on my way to Saskatoon to meet with Shelley after she was going to be done by the time I got there for the afternoon. And so I was kind of on the road. I'm kind of bored. I'm going to phone Pastor Max. I haven't talked to him for a long time. So I phoned him up. "Hello, Terry, how you doing?" You know, he's always excited about life. Always, never a moment where he's down, I don't think, ever. Talked to him for a couple of minutes. He says, "Hey, would you like to take over that church in Saskatoon, Christ the Healer?" And I said, instead of saying no, which I was tempted to, I said, "Okay, what do you have in mind?" So he told us what he had in mind. He wanted to turn the church over to us. We'd just have to start our own charitable organization, and he would hand the church over and do what you want to do with it. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. It's a challenge, right? And so I come into Saskatoon. I said, well, I got to talk to Shelley. And we keep in mind, we love the church we're at too. And so I got to talk to Shelley. And Shelley says, well, let's go down there and look at the building. And there was nobody here, so we just walked around. And within 5 or 10 minutes, we both looked at each other and said, we have to come here, don't we? You know? And it was like that quick. And then I met with him the following week, went to Edmonton and see if that's where he lives. Went to Edmonton to see him, and he told me what was up, and I said, are you sure, you want to do this? Because he just signed the building over to this place. And here's another thing he says, which was key too, because I don't think we could have done it. And I never asked or anything. He says, we'll give you $20,000 to start your ministry.
Wow.
And I thought, oh wow, how do you not take it? It's something really deep down, it's something I wanted to do. Because a few months earlier, I told Shelley, I said, I think we got to start a charitable organization. And I didn't know what we were going to do. But so that's the way it was. So that was September 15th. We decided the next week I really jumped into it, and then I had to go back and tell our board and our elders and stuff that we were going to be leaving at the end of the year. So it was happening pretty quick.
Wow.
So we had to start, that's when we started our charitable organization, started getting it going. And yeah, that's how we ended up here. And to be honest, it was pretty scary at the beginning, because it's a different world. Like, you live in rural Saskatchewan, you leave your doors open and people walk in and out of your house, nobody knocks, it's just kind of, it's all one kind of big family. Your neighbors need something, they probably come and borrow it or whatever. If you're not home, they take it. Here, you don't leave anything out for very long, or in any part of the city, not just here, but anywhere. But so it was a different world for us, for sure. And we had no homelessness in Assiniboia at all, period.
Well, this culture shock, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was at the beginning. It was like we just kept ourselves so busy because there was lots to do here. And we just were super busy. And eventually we got adjusted and still are being adjusted to the city. But it's been really good. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, you covered it all.
Wow. Well,
not every day somebody gives you a church,
yes.
Building and property and everything, and it's pretty amazing. We're really, Pastor Max really blessed us. We're an amazing man. To be even considered by him was really an honor, to begin with. First thing we did here was CBC heard about it. He was always in contact with the papers and newspapers and television stations and stuff. They heard what he was doing, and the CBC wanted to interview us on the television program, or me in particular, I guess, that time. So the first 3 weeks we were here, I'm like on CBC radio in the morning on their prime time show. It was like, wow, this is crazy.
Wow. What a journey. It's really interesting. And I mean, people can tell. They can tell that the history behind this church. I always thought that you've always headed this church. You've been in Saskatoon, but to hear that you came from rural Saskatchewan and then moved here, and the different cultures. Because in rural Saskatchewan, you mentioned there's no homeless person. You don't close your doors. But here, I'm just imagining myself in your shoes for a bit. Wow.
Yeah.
So, how long had you been Christians before when you started pastoring Christ the Healer Church?
Do you want to take that one? We got saved in 1991.
Yeah.
Both of us. Shelley got saved in July of 91. I got saved in September of 91.
Okay.
Yeah. So it had been quite a while. We had been in ministry, I guess, pastoring for 13 years before we came here.
And as Singapore, it took the whole 10 years.
Well, we did 10 there, and we were in 3 years in Sturgis, Saskatchewan, a small town right by my hometown.
Wow.
In East Central Saskatchewan. We were there for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I didn't want to be a pastor. I never thought I'd ever be a pastor. I was traveling as an evangelist then and helping out with churches, and we were always kind of on the move. And we stopped at a church, and they asked us if we were there for one Sunday because their pastor had resigned a month or two or whatever before that. And so we stopped in, preached one Sunday, and they asked us if we would be their pastors. And I said no right away. And they just wouldn't let it go though. And finally I said, okay, I'll do it for 3 months. And once the 3 months was up, then I said, you can get a real pastor then. I said, because I'm not really a pastor. So we ended up there for 3 years. And it was an Apostolic Church of Pentecost, ACOP. And that's how we ended up in Assiniboia.
Wow. Why did you say that you're not a real pastor?
I just never considered myself to be a pastor. I haven't been to Bible college or any stuff like that. I was so excited. I was 29 years old when I got saved. I was just so excited to be a part of the family. And God, I'd do anything. And I really didn't want to be in public speaking to me was the scariest thing on earth. And I did not want to do that at all. And it's a huge responsibility too. I thought, man, I could never do it. That's the way I thought. I could never do it. I still can't do it without Christ. Without Him, He qualifies us to become somebody that's unqualified. He qualifies by calling and answering. You answer the call, you become qualified. So it's a learning process. And Shelley, I don't know, you didn't really think we'd ever be pastoring?
No. Because he was actually an evangelist, right? So when we got filled with the Holy Spirit down in Pensacola, Florida, it was Sunday morning. We were both filled by then with the Holy Spirit. And I remember a lady coming up to me and saying, wow, are you a pastor's wife? And I went, no, never want to be one. You know, just because, like, I've always put a pastor's wife on a pedestal. Always, because I always thought they were just such a faithful woman to stand behind her man that, you know, that was looking after all these people, you know. So I had a different perspective on a pastor's wife. So that when Terry did take that position as a pastor in Sturgis, I had a really hard time with it because as an evangelist's wife, you just go into a church, he speaks, you know, it's all about turning your life over to Him and getting saved, and, you know, you mess up the church and then you leave, right? So you don't really have connection with the people. You just go in there, mess them up, and the pastor looks after them as we go away, right? So when he did become a pastor, I really wrestled with God with that. And I just said, Lord, how am I going to be a pastor's wife? I just don't want to be one. And we had gone through a real tough time with our oldest daughter. And after that, we went through that. God just showed me, He says, you can be a pastor's wife. Just be open, honest, and real. And the people that come your way will be the same. So that's what my motto has been since we've started, that if I'm open and honest and real with people, they're going to be the same.
Wow. And what's really impressive about what you're sharing is that, for those who don't know, Pastor Terry also lectured my brother in Faith Alive Bible College. But then to hear that you never went to Bible college, yet you lectured at Bible college. So how did that happen?
I guess they just asked me to come if I wanted to teach a course. And that's another weird story too. Before we went to Assiniboia, I was offered a job to become a president of a Bible college. and in Swan River, Manitoba, and it's people from the Ukrainian descent from all over the world come there, and it had been around for 60 years. And I said to the president at the time, I said, shouldn't it be a good idea to at least have a high school education to become a president of a Bible college? And he says, it's got nothing to do with it. But I didn't take that job, but I went to Assiniboia instead. But that was weird. So it's stuff. God opened the door, and is pretty unique. When I was teaching at Faith Alive there, and I taught at that Bible college in Swan River too, and Manitoba. But I was teaching in Faith Alive. There was an older gentleman, two older gentlemen that were there, and one of them had taught at SciAst, or what's it called now, Polytech now, for years, retired. And he asked me, he says, where did you go to school? Like, where did you go to university to teach like that, learn how to teach like that? I said, I don't even have a high school education. I have no idea how it happened. It's just that God started teaching me how to teach. So it's like bizarre, kind of bizarre. When he told me that, I said, wow. I said, the guy that taught for 30 years said I was a good teacher. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And that's all the glory to God, because I was not a model student when I went to school. I think they would have had several. Back when I went to school, they didn't have terminology like you have now, ADHD and all that kind of stuff like that. They just called you either you were retarded or stupid. And they treated you like that, and they didn't really, that's just the way it was. And so they didn't have all that stuff back then, and I had problems learning and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't care. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to learn about whatever, anything but school. So I quit when I was 16 and started working full time after that. So yeah, and when people ask me where you've been to Bible college and all that stuff, I've been nowhere. I don't even have a high school education. As a matter of fact, my last year was in high school. The guidance counselor, we had guidance counselors back then, and he had this office upstairs. He was all by himself, and he called me in there and he says, Terry, he says, it's coming towards the end of the year. No, it was probably about February actually. And he says, we have a problem. And I said, oh yeah, what's that? And he said, well, the teacher said, if you come back to school, they're not coming back. and he said, but that's not going to happen. So here's what we'll do for you. He says, we'll give you your grade 10 if you promise never to come back here. And so that's kind of where I was at back then. Yeah. One of God's called chosen ones. That's why I look at anybody, man. If God can save me, number one, he can save anybody. And if God can use me or work through me, he can work through anybody. I don't care. It doesn't matter the background, wherever you come from. I don't care what country you're from or wherever. God's able to change people, restore people, and take them into their calling. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What about you, Mama Shelley? Before even you talk about your high school experience or your schooling experience, there's something you said earlier on about struggling with God after Pastor Terry started pastoring the church. It seems like you enjoyed the evangelical call better than the pastoring call,
right?
Initially, and so I just want to hear a little bit more about that, because many times, yes, as you said, we put pastors' wives on a pedestal. Sorry, how do you call it?
Pedestal.
Pedestal, thank you. Yeah, and many times what I used to think is that you have training before you become, a pastor's wife or what. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more about that?
Okay. No training.
Just like poof. One night you wake up and poof.
This was my training.
Wow.
Terry's sister, she was the oldest in the family, and she'd always say, "How do you put up with him?" I said, "You didn't marry him, I did." And when we took our vows when we got married, I just said, hey, whatever, I'm committed to him no matter what. And yeah, I struggled with God, not with him.
Wow, I love that.
I struggled with God because I knew like he could never pull. It was God that had to get my heart, right? Like, I will do.